thing that I always said to you was, I'm not going to complain about that for 5 shows in a row. What I am going to do is talk about each move and talk about why I like a move and why I don't like a move. So I thought it'd be fitting to do a pros and cons of the Andrei Kuzmenko extension. 2 years, and again, repeating it for the people that were on the live show and, you know, we weren't live. 2 years at $5.5 million annually for Andrei Kuzmenko, 12-team, no trade clause on that deal.
I'll start with a pro.
Okay.
Dan Milstein, the agent for Andrei Kuzmenko, just set up the best potential contract extension after this one for himself. This is an amazing deal for Andrei Kuzmenko because the next 2 seasons, he's likely to play a lot of minutes with Elias Pettersson, and if he continues to have success, he's going to hit free agency as a 28-year-old who can play with top-end players and is going to be potentially the winger of Elias Pettersson's maximum prime. Like, what a great spot for Kuzmenko to get paid in. And Dan Milstein, I think, knows exactly what he's doing. When he wanted to sign a bridge deal, he's been talking about a bridge deal for a long time. He's going to absolutely maximize the value with the cap going up down the road. I tell you what, the biggest pro in my eyes is how much money Andrei Kuzmenko is going to make from this situation. That's my biggest pro. Is it not? It's
nope,
the biggest.
You're right.
The
it's
biggest
not a pro
positive,
for Canucks
if you look
fans.
at the whole situation, the biggest positive here is how much money Andrei Kuzmenko can potentially make. And not just in this contract. This contract makes sense. This is a solid money for value contract. Excellent deal for Andrei Kuzmenko. The Canucks, they're going to get their value out of this because he's probably going to be playing, like I said, a lot with Pettersson. But not only like how many playoff, I was going to ask how many playoff games are they going to win in these next 2 years? How many playoff games are they going to be in the next 2 years? Like, what's the best case scenario for the Vancouver Canucks? Think about it. Like, the best case scenario for the Vancouver Canucks in this spot would be like the best legitimate, because like the best case scenario is like, yeah, they win the Stanley Cup next year. That's not going to happen. The best case scenario for the Canucks is like maybe he hits his prime at 29, right? Like maybe he doesn't have the most incredible 2 years here. We can still lock him down at a decent contract. Then he hits his prime at 29. Is that not the best
what
case
the hell
for the
are we
Vancouver
even
Canucks
talking
here?
about? Yeah, no, you're
Seriously.
right. You're right. Okay. I think what it comes down to, Chris, and another pro. Let's get all the pros out of the way first. I feel like we're gonna have a few more cons. Another pro that I want to bring up: Pettersson gets his line mate there for 2 more years. You keep Elias Pettersson happy, sure. Another pro: the contract is fine. Like 2 years at $5.5 million in a vacuum for Andrei Kuzmenko's production. That's a fine contract. Okay. The Canucks keep a player and his agent happy. Kuzmenko wanted to stay here.
Milstein's already very happy with the Canucks.
Well, I'm saying they're keeping him happy. They're keeping him happy. They're keeping Kuzmenko happy. And that's about it for the pros, I think. Okay? Now let's get into some cons. Because on the same side of all of those things, Pettersson gets his line mate. That's great. The contract is fine in a vacuum. That's fantastic. But for the Canucks, it's not a good contract. 2 years at $5.5 million for another winger? You don't need all of these wingers. And again, you look at where you are in your competitive cycle if you're the Canucks, right? And people are saying, well, I didn't want to see them trade Kuzmenko because what if they could only get a 2nd-round pick and a B-level prospect for Kuzmenko? That's great. Like, that's a fine return. If that's all you could get, I think they could have got more than that. But people will say, oh, well, you know, I don't like this. And this idea that the Canucks needed to keep Kuzmenko because they weren't going to get a first plus for him on the trade market. It makes no sense. Like whatever you think the best case scenario, what do you think the best case scenario is of keeping Kuzmenko right now on this contract if you're the Canucks? Like, what is the best case scenario
for the Canucks? It's what I said. It's like he doesn't hit his prime for another 2 years. You just push down the road and hope that he hits his prime then.
It makes no sense.
And then you get him then. Like,
it makes no sense. And I tweeted this out from the Canucks Army account, and I'm gonna say it again. A week ago, we hear major surgery needs to be done to this roster. Major surgery needs to be done to this roster, says the surgeon before rubbing some dirt on it. Like, holy cow, what are we doing here? And I'm not, again, I wanted to come out here and be as impartial as possible. That's why I wanted to do pros and cons instead of just coming out and saying this deal sucks, blah, blah, blah. Because, again, the deal doesn't suck.
I'll give you a pro.
Sure.
We get to talk to Andrei Kuzmenko in the media for 2 more years. That's a big pro in my eyes. That makes me happy when I go to the rink.
That's great. When it comes to the direction of this team, though, this is a laughable misstep. Like, laughable misstep for this team. And again, this is nothing against Andrei Kuzmenko. Everybody gets confused whenever you say stuff like this. So,
no,
well,
you know
he's
what?
been
I don't
good.
think they do. I don't think you need to say that anymore.
Okay, sure. Andrei Kuzmenko's got a 25% shooting percentage right now. Okay? That's coming back down to earth. His production's going to drop. It is another example, again, of a winger, keep in mind, that the Canucks have just bought high on. Like, the Canucks plan, you ask for a plan, Chris? Their plan is, well, we're going to extend and keep and clutch on to every good player we have. And then when those good players start to regress or are bad, we're going to give up assets to get out of that so that we can sign more good players. It's simple, really. It's not working. This is not the way to do it. And again, I was not critical of the team when they came out and said they wanted to retool. I was going to judge them on each move that they made. That was how I wanted to go about this. They've made their move, and I'm judging them big time. This is a bad move for this team right now. Not getting assets for Kuzmenko. And by the way, don't even get me started on the whole fact that every team knows they can't afford Bo Horvat now. Yeah. So all this leverage they were talking about, and we're not going to let anybody talk to his agent about an extension. What are you doing? You've got no leverage, and you have to hope. I won't even say you have to think, because you don't have to think about this with this team. You don't have to think this. You hope that the Canucks have a trade lined up for Bo Horvat, and the team already knows that they're going to make this deal, and it's basically just dotting some I's and T's and whatever, right? Crossing your T's. That's what you hope for this team right now, because they have put themselves in such a position right now where not only have they made this move for Kuzmenko, which we've made pretty clear has far more cons than it does pros for this team, right? They bought high on a winger again, like another winger. This 24 hours, not even, after you play against the Seattle Kraken, who, look at their team, is just 4 lines. Like, you want to run 4 lines? You don't do it like this. You don't do it by just paying big for wingers. Like, you have to, I don't even know what to say. Like, I literally, this team is going to give me, like, I literally feel like I'm losing brain cells covering and talking about this team.
It feels like, and there's a good comment in here from Commander Vander, but it's bang on, where it's another spot where how many times in the Jim Benning era did you see buy high and sell low? And that's what Commander Vander said. This is what it feels like here. They're like, it's not like you're buying, like, you're probably buying value here on the 2 years, but are you really buying value in the long term of this bank of even, say Kuzmenko signs after this deal? Like, you're buying even higher than on him at that point. So, like, if the Canucks really thought Kuzmenko, from 40 whatever games he's played, if they thought he was going to be like a long-term fix for Pettersson, then they probably should have gone for the approach of long-term. Now it's just like, the only way the Canucks can win this deal with, like, the actual process of the deal is if they're winning in the next 2 years. And I find that so hard to accomplish.
And I just have to go against this argument here. And Corey Anderson, regular commenter in the chat. Corey, we always appreciate your contributions, but I've seen this from too many people, and I got to pick this apart right now. He said, you guys are assuming every winger with this team will be back. The next 6 months will have to be judged as a whole. If they buy out Pearson, Garland, and trade Besser, then this makes more sense. Okay, so put more money on the books, okay? More dead money on the book. Canucks have more than enough of that. And then just trade the player that you might have to actually give up assets for. That's the whole point of the trade Kuzmenko argument is, yeah, you've got Garland and Besser here, and yeah, they're not as good as Kuzmenko is right now, but maybe don't sell on those guys because you're not really going to be competitive over the next 2 years anyway, and start to make smart moves where you're just loading up on assets whenever possible. It's this never-ending cycle of what I just said. Well, let's just trade the bad players. Let's just get rid of the bad players. Newsflash, and I'm not directing this at Corey. Newsflash for everybody out there. Other teams see your bad players and know that they are bad players. They are not giving up a second or first round pick for Brock Besser. They may have done that for Kuzmenko. There were teams calling the Canucks wanting to trade for Andrei Kuzmenko. The whole time, the Canucks have made it clear that they intend to re-sign this player. That was what I've been told the entire time. They never really entertained the idea of trading Kuzmenko. I think that's just a gigantic misstep by this team, and I will not listen to the argument that, well, it's fine because they can buy out Pearson and Garland and then they can trade Besser as well. You're giving up assets to do that, and one of those assets is money, right? Like, again,
and flexibility.
You gain so much flexibility with the cap. You would have had a draft pick to play with, and again, like, Think of having 3 first-round picks. You don't even have to use all those. I say this once an episode. Look at what the Montreal Canadiens were able to do by just having so much draft capital. They traded for a 21-year-old center. You know what? No team is probably trading Andrei Kuzmenko for a 21-year-old center that the Canucks want, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen. But a team is trading a first-round pick, like a mid to late first-round pick, plus a third or whatever it was.
No, but not even that. This is what sucks for Canucks fans is Canucks fans will never know the power of having a trade asset prospect.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've seen the argument of like, but are you guaranteed that late first round pick is going to hit? No, but look at what teams are doing right now. Look at what the Vancouver Canucks are doing with the Carolina Hurricanes and Scotty Moore, who was picked in the second round. Look at Brock Faber, who was picked in the second round. Drew Hellison was picked in the second round. Right shot defensemen who were picked in the second round. How much value they have on a trade deadline. Like the Canucks fans, unfortunately, the way this team is run, they're never going to know what it's like to have a valuable trade aspect prospect. Like, even if they wanted to be good, if they wanted to be good and add, they can't. Like, they literally can't. Like, it's unreal to see. And I feel so unfortunate because, like, people have been making that argument, like, yeah, but this late first round pick is not going to be as valuable as Kuzmenko might be. Yeah, it is, man.
And for what?
And you get to save the money.
Is Kuzmenko pushing you to the playoffs? No. Maybe he gets you closer, right? Like, yeah, he probably gets you closer than Lane Peterson on Elias Pettersson's wing.
Yep.
Okay? He probably gets you closer. But look at this team right now. Like, this idea of just, well, we're just going to keep retooling, and the way to do that is to keep all of our good players and get rid of all of our bad ones. It's not that simple. You need flexibility, and the Canucks continuously don't give themselves flexibility. And this is the end. This is the end of me ever saying for Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, defending them when they bring up the argument of, well, you know, like, it's really hard to make moves in a flat cap environment, and we need to free up cap space, and we don't have any cap space. I'm not listening to that. They've committed too much money to wingers.
I quickly just was like, and I don't have the numbers exactly right, but this is just like the rough draft me doing it before I counted in for some of the LTI guys and even included Tanner Pearson as an LTI guy. The Canucks like go into next year let's assume Poolman and Pearson are on an LTI. I think it's 13 guys under contract. So 9 spots to fill, or 10 spots to fill for your full roster at the NHL level. They have like $12 million. Like you're about to rely on, you know, hopefully Höglander doesn't ask for anywhere near $2 million because you're not gonna be able to afford Höglander.
Better keep him in the A if you don't want.
You need to now fill the rest of this roster. You have to like the roster is going to lose Horvat. You're gonna lose Luke Schenn. You're gonna have to.
They might re-sign him too.
You're gonna have to pay Ethan Bear to keep him in, and then you're looking, and Bear's not gonna be under $1 million. No way, man. Then you're going to have to fill the rest of your lineup with like 10 spots of guys. So you take this Canucks team, you take away their leading goal scorer, you add in Podkolzin, right? He's still on his ELC. You add in Höglander, he's going to need another contract. It's not going to be huge. And then it's like, okay, so you lost Horvat, you lost Schenn. You're also now needing to bring up like pretty much 10 guys who make $1 million or less. That's what the team's going to look like next year.
The thing is,
that's
Chris,
crazy to think that. And then you look at it and it's okay. So that team next year doesn't sound very good. That does not sound like a good playoff team unless you find like the most valuable $950,000 players in the world. But that's half of this deal that you just signed for Kuzmenko when you could have added prospects. You also could have had that extra 5.5 in cap space. It just doesn't, like, man. Like we said, we have to judge this management group now off of the things they've said about retooling and being competitive in 2 to 3 years. I don't see how the Kuzmenko deal really helps that much because I don't think they're competitive next year. The way we just talked about the roster, man, they are not adding much on this team.
This is embarrassing. This is an embarrassing way to go about your business if you're an NHL organization in the position where the Canucks are. This is flat out embarrassing. Like, I tried to come in here and not,
dude, you are going to need, look at this next year sign, like Myers, OEL, Hughes, Stillman. Okay. And like I said, Ethan Bear is going to need more money.
Now, hang on a sec.
But here's the thing. You are going to fill the bottom of your defense core, the bottom pairing, with guys that are like worse than Riley Stillman.
You might have to fill 3 center positions with guys who are worse than Riley Stillman.
Yeah. Oh.
3 center positions, Chris. 3 lines. You have Elias Pettersson, and then you're going to have Jack Studnicka, followed by Sheldon Dries, followed by Lane Peterson playing center.
You better start to get used to, people better start to learn the game of Justin Dowling. He's a good example in the AHL. He's going to be a center in the NHL next year for the Canucks, maybe. You're going to get ready. John Stevens, hell of a leader down in the AHL. Get used to him.
Don't start with
He's playing 3C for you next year in Vancouver.
Don't start with this. Okay,
no, seriously.
Here's the other thing. On the other side of what I just said, right? Like here's a positive take on the situation.
Okay.
With this signing, and we look at how bleak the cap situation is and all that sort of stuff and how hard it's going to be to fill a roster, I wonder if they have gotten the green light on a Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout. I wonder. It would free up a lot of cap space next year. And again, this is one of those things, and I know, look, I only blow up when they make the bad move. I'm not gonna come and, I wasn't gonna spend weeks on end crying about them not rebuilding or saying the word rebuild. I'm gonna criticize them on each move they make, okay? Right now, I'm not going to bother talking too much in the same vein about, well, look at the cap situation with Kuzmenko, because there's something coming. They've got to do something here. I just don't know if I'm going to like what they do. Like, I don't think buying out Garland is the smartest idea for this team. And it looks like they might end up doing that. Like, you had the chance to trade Kuzmenko. And again, this is the thing, Chris, when it comes to keeping the market happy and keeping your fans happy, this market's been crying for a rebuild, like legitimately begging the team to rebuild. That doesn't happen often in pro sports. It's usually like disciplined general managers and owners that have to try and convince their fans, like, hey, you know what? We're going to have to rebuild. This market is begging for a rebuild. If they've traded Kuzmenko for a second-round pick and a B-level prospect and came out to the fans and said, you know what? We weren't going to be able to sign Kuzmenko to something that made sense for us, so we had to trade him, and that's how we ended up here. There's not going to be fans saying, I can't believe they did this to me. I really liked Kuzmenko. There might be a couple fans that are upset about it in a vacuum, but when you explain your process and you say, you know what, this deal doesn't make sense, because let's be clear, the deal they had to sign and ended up signing, it doesn't make sense for the Canucks. It literally doesn't. It does not make sense for them in their competitive window. It's a fine contract. I like Andrei Kuzmenko, the player. The Canucks are not in a position to be taking any risk right now.
Yeah.
They need to be taking sure moves. And the only sure move here, Chris, was to sell Andrei Kuzmenko for whatever prospect and whatever pick you get. Even if those don't turn out and all you're left with is cap space, that's a win. That's a win for where this team's at. So don't give me the, well, that B-level prospect might not turn out. Well, that first-round pick might not turn out. Don't give me that, because you're getting the cap space for sure. And that is an advantage for this team that they've now lost.
Because it's like, I want to say that it's like me and Harm talked about this one time. It's the compound that you get from the cap space that gives you another thing of value. You would have had that $5.5 million of space to buy a first-round pick, basically. Like, so you could have looked at this, and now that you have the money for Kuzmenko, it's crazy to think Kuzmenko's value loss compared to what you could have gained in a trade is basically now 2 first-round picks, because now you're paying him for next year and the year after that. If you'd done this right and used that cap space to just take some team's player who's making $5.5 million and completely sucks, dude.
Okay, and here's the thing.
Dude, I just like
you laugh about it.
No, I know. I'm trying to like care and stuff, but it's like it's really hard to like. It's hard for us to like give an opinion and think that it's actually something that can happen a lot of the time now. Like it seriously is, because we have been saying for a long time now what you can gain if you went the right way and you flipped Luke Schenn, you flipped Bo Horvat, you flipped Andrei Kuzmenko.
Just one disciplined deadline.
And we were talking about it like, man, that is what the fan base wants. That would be deserving of the fan base. Like, the fan base deserves that. And it's just like now I'm just waiting for like, okay, now Luke Schenn is going to be extended for 2 years at 3.5. Bo Horvat is now going to sign the deal. And it's like, oh, now the Canucks are going to be, rolling next season with 15 players signed, and they're already like $6 million over cap. Like, that's because what have they shown us?
They've got to know something that we don't. They have to know something we don't.
I really, yeah. And
although I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that at this point.
I don't know.